The gospel lesson for the sermon for this morning. The gospel. We're going to move on to the gospel since we don't have a piano player. That's okay. Is Luke chapter 15. Sorry, guys. Is Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 3, and 11b through 23. So that's a long, big chunk. Okay? But you're going to recognize it. And it's important that we're reading 1 through 3 because it sets it up for the whole thing. Sets it up, and then I'm going to tee off right here. So this is what it says. All the tax collectors and sinners were gathering around Jesus to listen to him. The Pharisees and legal experts were grumbling, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Jesus said, see, now we jumped. That's right, to 11. And Jesus said, "A certain man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the inheritance.' Then the father divided his estate between them. Soon afterward, the younger son gathered everything together and took a trip to a faraway land. There he wasted his wealth through extravagant living. When he had used up his resources, a severe food shortage arose in that country, and he began to be in need. He hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. He longed to eat his fill from what the pigs ate, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food, but I'm starving to death? I will get up. I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Take me on as one of your hired hands.' So he got up and went to his father. Verse 20b. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with compassion. His father ran to him, hugged him, and kissed him. Then his son said, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his fingers and sandals on his feet. Fetch the fattened calf and slaughter it. We must celebrate with feasting, because this son of mine was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Wouldn't that be great if the story ended there? Now his older son was in the field. The subtext being, doing what he ought to do. Coming in from the field, he approached the house and heard music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what was going on. The servant replied, "Your brother has arrived, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he received his son back safe and sound." Then the older son was furious and didn't want to enter in. But his father came out and begged him. He answered his father, "Look, I've served you all these years, and I've never disobeyed your instruction. Yet you've never given me as much as a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours returned, after gobbling up your estate on prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him?" Then his father said, "Son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is now found." The gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. This passage. Wait, why did I turn that off? That was dumb. If there was a fire and you had to grab one piece of scripture, you could only take one with you. A lot of you would take a psalm. maybe. Think about it. This is what I would take. This parable. It's my hip pocket sermon. If I ever come across a, God forbid, knock on wood, an instance where I show up somewhere and I'm supposed to preach, but I haven't had anything prepared, this is what I got. Because it preaches. Jesus' story preaches. And, you know, I complain so much about how they give us, like, they put us over here and they put us over there in the Revised Common Lectionary. But today, it's like the manna from heaven that they talk about in Joshua, right? This is the passage. And it starts out with the grumbling Pharisees and Jesus with the sinners. And he's, you know, almost as if the prodigal son himself is, like, kind of there with Jesus, right? In that far off land, doing God knows what, God knows who. And these Pharisees identify how naughty Jesus is being as he's eating with the tax collectors and all the sinners. The people that are the ne'er-do-wells of the community are coming forward and they're with Jesus, and the legal experts and the Pharisees are saying, no, this is not the way to do it. But it sort of seems like in this passage that they're grumbling, right? So if they're grumbling, they're sort of not even being direct, right? They're not coming to Jesus to challenge him. They're just sort of talking behind their hands. Eesh. So Jesus is aware of this because, you know, Jesus. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. And what they cut out for space today, you know, because we couldn't read all of this, is two other stories. It's all in this section of Luke, the parable of the lost. It's chapter 15, basically all chapter 15 in Luke. And so the first one is the coin, where the woman has 10 coins, she loses one, she lights the lamp, she tells everybody, we got to look for this coin, she sweeps the whole house. When she finds it, what does she do? I have my phone, she kisses it, puts it in the drawer, and goes back to bed. No, she has a celebration with her neighbors that she found the coin. Odd. The second story is about the sheep. He has 100 sheep, one gets lost, he leaves the 99 to go find the lost sheep. He finds the sheep, eventually, comes back, guess the 99 are okay, nothing happened to them without a shepherd there. I don't know how that works. And then tells everyone, please celebrate with me, I found a lost sheep. And then the third story is the one we have for today about the man with 2 sons. It's about God and us. And Jesus' story is in response to this grumbling Pharisees. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Clarence Jordan is the founder of Koinonia Farms, which is now Koinonia Partners. It's in Americus, Georgia, right where Habitat for Humanity was started. And in the 50s, he had this farm where they would farm like pecans and peanuts. That's that area where in Georgia where you could grow that stuff. And they were having this farm, and what they decided to do, they called it koinonia because that's the Greek word for fellowship that's in the New Testament. It's the Koine Greek. It's not spoken anymore, but that's what the New Testament was written in. And so it was a Christian idea that this guy, Clarence Jordan, had of bringing people to this sort of commune and living together and living in community and just farming and being self-sustaining. Well, the reason why everybody, all their neighbors in the 50s got mad is not because they had interracial people working together side by side in the fields. The problem was when they sat down for their daily meal, they ate together. And that's when the Molotov cocktails and the bombing started in Georgia in the 50s, because they ate with different races sitting at the same table. And it was a big deal in the 1950s. It was a big deal 2,000 years ago that Jesus breaks his bread with people that the legal experts and the Pharisees don't think he ought to do. So when that starts happening, you see Jesus is upsetting that status quo that people are used to. These people go over here and these people go over here. And that's the way we like it. And Jesus is saying, oh, this is not the way God has intended. And I think Clarence Jordan, this farmer with the, and then people in the north that didn't agree with what that was happening to them would all buy their products. And they had this really cool slogan, let's ship the nuts out of Georgia. Anyway, but it's the same concept. He was eating with them. He was sitting down to table with these people, and it made people upset. So this story, this kid goes off and does naughty things, and they're assuming he's a Jew, right? Because he's with the legalists versus the Pharisees. And then he has to feed the pigs. Eek. You can't even get near pigs. You're not supposed to. I mean, they're not kosher. They're not holy. You can't be, and you're unclean then when you're slopping the pigs. And he wants to eat what they're eating. I mean, Jesus tried to tell this story in such a way that the people were like, oh! Even the ones just listening that were like the quote-unquote sinners. Like the tax collectors were good Jews either. Well, they weren't maybe good Jews, but they were Jews too. They wouldn't have touched the pigs. Everybody's horrified by this story. And that there's no mention of the son getting through like ritual cleaning or anything. He just comes back and the father runs to him and embraces him. Just as he is. So maybe it's about God and us, and maybe it's an example. Maybe it's both. The woman sweeps the floor and lights the lamp. The shepherd leaves the 99 and goes to find the one sheep. The father that welcomes his son with open arms. Maybe that's an example. And we like to think of God as being that for us, right? We're the lost one that gets found and everyone celebrates. But maybe turn it on its head and put yourself in the position of the responsibility of the woman lighting the lamp, the man, the shepherd looking for the sheep, and the man, the father of the two sons. All these three stories have one thing in common, the celebration. It's a big celebration. There's a lot more details about the son's celebration, fatted calf, ring on the finger, sandals on the feet, the robe, and then the whole drama with the older son. You have this celebration. The first two have the relentless pursuit of the lost thing. A woman does everything she can to find that coin. The shepherd leaves the majority of the sheep behind, risks all of them to go find the one. In the last parable, the father doesn't pursue the son, but rejoices upon his return. This is how we know that the coin and the lost sheep and the prodigal son are also us. We're the coin, we're the lost sheep, we're the errant son. We're also other people in that story. The scornful neighbors. What is she making a fuss in the middle of the night trying to find this coin? What is he doing trying to leave 99 sheep? What about the older son? You know, it's not written in there how the neighbors responded to the woman with the coin and the man with the sheep, but it's definitely in there how the older son responded to the father's extravagance. And let's face it, this father is ridiculous. I know we love it when we're the prodigal son. We love it. It's great. It's God's grace. Oh, the expense and the extravagance. When we're not the son, when we're just standing on the sidelines watching it, it's irresponsible, it's offensive. It is so egregious. The older son has every right to be angry. That's not fair. Now, look at the sermon title. Those of you who are don't think you need grammar, today you do. Because this sermon title, without the comma, says, God's just not fair. But with the comma, where are my English majors out there? God is just not fair. God is just. The word just being, God is the God of justice. But fairness is something we create, right? Because what happens here isn't fair. It's not fair. You can't go to your father and say, Father, I want everything. Just act like you're dead, divide up the estate, and give it to me right now. I don't wonder what kind of college takes that much money. Just thinking about that for my own life. So, not fair. But that's how we are. We are like this. We know about fairness. I'm going to tell you a story. The title of this story is The Tattle Phone. If you're like me, I'm a big fan of This American Life, the radio program. It's been on for like 30 years. There's one of their producers is David Kestenbaum. And he had 2 kids in this preschool. And it all started because the teachers were trying to get the kids to stop tattling. Because in the pre-K classroom, it's constant. You can imagine. 20 or so kids, little kids, and they bring the teacher all these little injustices. And if the teacher gets involved, the teacher has to arbitrate all these little cases. And it's just a time suck, right? So one of the teachers has this great idea. She took a tissue box, hung it on the wall, then took a plastic phone receiver and stuck it in there. And she said, okay, tell it to the tattle phone. It gets better. So when this radio producer, when David Kestenbaum found out about this, he thought this was brilliant. And he loved the idea of a vessel for all these little injustices, this unfairness that's going on every day. And he wanted to hear what they had to say. And so he asked the teacher, and he asked all the parents, and some of the parents said, yes, please do it. It's hilarious. So he set up the phone to be able to record every time the kid picked it up and talked into the tattle phone, they would record. And if you know This American Life, you know the host is Ira Glass. So we got Ira Glass to record the outgoing message. Hello, you've reached the tattle phone. Tell me the story, the whole story. And then after the beeps, and the kids talk. And then David Kestenbaum would get like an email of an MP3 of the kids talking in the tattle phone and what they would say. And the kids had never seen a phone like this, like a 1980s phone, and they were like, what? And they said one of the kids went on vacation with her parents and went to the hotel and looked over and saw because they don't have landlines anymore, saw the phone and said, oh, there's a tattle phone in the hotel. So this was huge. There were recordings all day long, with the exception of nap time. The kids used the phone to unburden themselves of all the unfairness around them. Sometimes they told jokes or sang songs or just talked. But David Kestenbaum he interviewed the preschool teacher, Kathleen Jones, and she says, how much of their day is about justice? And she replied, I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I could say the majority of their day. And she says this, that is everything, there is everything to them, the rules. They can sit down to play a game, and that whole playtime, there'll be nothing but arguing about the rules, and there's no playtime left, and they feel good about it. It's funny, they can't even make breakfast for themselves. They can't get dressed. They can barely talk at all, and they're just full of, that's not fair. There's actual scientific research on this. Kids know when something's unfair, some when they're just 12 months old. David Kestenbaum's kids weren't even walking when they were 12 months old, but he said, they still know that. And this kind of thing is obvious. So many of the conflicts in this world come down to some version of what's going on in this classroom with kids who are still toddling on their legs. What's fair? How do you divide up something that there's a limited quantity of, or a perceived limited quantity of? Sometimes I think that the main usefulness for numbers is so that they can count. Joe has this many, Jane has this many, that's not fair. And their whole life is about this scale of justice. At the end of the day, the phone worked, its original intention was to get the teachers not to have to arbitrate all these little tattles and these little squabbles. But it made me aware of the reality that we're wired this way almost from the jump. Outside of this parable in the real world, how would we treat our next door neighbor, adult sibling, what have you, if they acted this way towards their terrible child? If we were the terrible one being forgiven by God's love and grace, it's good. Oh, thank you. But when the extravagance on this level is metered out on someone we deem undeserving, we balk. Do we not? I do. That's why there's an older son in this parable, grumbling, just like the Pharisees. So that Jesus is holding up a mirror to them. This is you. This whole thing started with the Pharisees. He's this miracle guy, and he's with these people, and they don't deserve him. You know, if Jesus would have just played along and gone with the legal experts and the Pharisees and played by their rules, there would be no cross in his future. And we wouldn't be here today talking about him. So does that put in perspective sometimes the way we lived our lives? That's not fair. You've got to stand in line. You've got to take your lumps. You have to do this. But when we get something that's not fair toward us, it's grace. God is just, not necessarily fair. The story is about this father who's extravagant and lavish. And friends, it's not fair. It doesn't mean it's not good. Amen.